corner of Vine and Yucca in historic Hollywood, California. The building behind me is almost as iconic to the Hollywood skyline as the Hollywood sign. But what's even cooler is the recording studio inside. It's seen sessions from everyone from Nat King Cole, Frank Sinatra, and Dean Martin, all the way to Paul McCartney, Bob Dylan. Even the Oscars record their audio in there. Let's go inside and check out the legend that is Capitol Studios. So we're here at Capitol Studio A. I'm sitting with Vice President of Capitol Studios, Paula Salvatori. Thank you for coming and sitting with us today.
Thank you for coming to visit me.
You're like the queen of the LA recording studio scene. Like, you've seen it all. How did you get into this business?
Just by pure desire of wanting to be around music and musicians. So I called my friend Vinny Poncia, who produced Kiss. He's from my hometown, but I met him out here. Yeah. And I said, what do I got to know to work in a recording studio? This is kind of embarrassing because it's like, you know, just it's kind of willpower. But I said, what are you going to know to work in a recording studio? And he said, 24-track, Dolby, non-Dolby, I don't know. It's too much to tell you. Yeah. So I said, that's good. So I called them up and I said, I'm around the corner. I'd like to apply for a job in traffic. And I know 24-track, Dolby, and Dolby. And I dropped a few names of guys that I did little stuff for. And then they said, okay, come down. You're in. And my dad goes, you know, you got in, but you better learn how to stay in. Like, I'm like, whoops. And then it was 1990, and right around September, Labor Day, someone called me. Rick Plushner, who ran Neve at the time, he was talking to us about consoles at Sound City. I just said, I have to take you to lunch for my boss, Joe. You know, he wants, but we're never going to buy anything. And he said, well, let me invite a couple of people from Capitol. And I'm like, oh, I really can't afford that. We were so broke. So he brought them, and they were looking for someone here. They had just built this room, it was brand new, and they were looking for a studio manager, but they didn't tell me that day, so I was like all bouncing off the walls, funny, which I guess was okay. Yeah. And then a couple weeks later, they called me for the job. From Sound City to here, and you've been here ever since, and you're now vice president. 28 years. How long has this building been here, and how long has the studio been part of this building? Yeah. Capitol Records started in 1942, and they were on Melrose. You know, Johnny Mercer was one of the main writers for Capitol back then. And he got together with Glenn Wallach, who had a studio, had like a record store, kind of a recording area on Sunset and Vine. And then Buddy DeSilva, who was a lawyer, they got together. With the money they made, I think a lot on Nat King Cole's Nature Boy and stuff, whatever was in the 40s. Yeah. They made good deal money, and they decided they needed a record company and a studio. So anyway, they got this property, and Les Paul, you know, was here, and he's like, we need recording studios. So, and then we want to do, this is in 1956. So 55, 56, they broke ground, and they started building this. And they made this room, all that was studio, the whole room.
Like live room.
Yeah. And the control room was over there, just because they didn't need big control rooms back then. Then it started with, you know, Sinatra and Dean Martin, Ella Fitzgerald, and Bobby Darin. You know, they had lay of the land, you know.
So I'm reading a name on this box, this old mic box. It just says Frank on it. I think I know what's in there, but tell me.
Okay. It's the Neumann.
So this is the mic that Frank used to sing.
Yep, and we do have a few of these.
Does everybody request this?
Box. Yes.
How does it work when someone comes in and is going to do the studio? Can they request?
Oh yeah.
They can request the Frank.
And especially if they're filming, they request this mic. You know, so.
And this, when was this from? Like what? I mean, what was the era on
this? This is like Germany in the 30s. That Neumann was making these mics.
I mean, that box is from the 1930s.
Yeah, you can tell the box. Yeah.
In a studio that's this famous and this iconic and has this much legacy, does the gear have to change? How often do you guys stay up to date on, or does part of what people like being the heritage of the?
Yeah, well, these mics are from the 30s. You know, a lot of the stuff we have is from the old days, but you know, in the consoles we've changed a few times. That's kind of like our mix, staying with the vintage but keeping up to date with the future. We were the first ones to have ISDN fiber optic, which when Phil Ramone did Frank Sinatra duets. So we stay on that cutting edge, we try to do that, and then we always have to keep up with the highest grade of Pro Tools.
What does it feel like to be part of such a iconic kind of, it defines, for 60 years now, everyone's favorite records have been made in these rooms. What does it feel like to be a part of that?
You know, I feel like I'm just living my life. This is the life that kind of was cut out for me. It's kind of awesome that, you know, more or less, I'm glad it's kind of behind me, because I think if I ever knew it was in front of me, I'd be overwhelmed. I mean, I've been in recording studios with like Quincy Jones, and one time Quincy was looking around at the Brothers Johnson and Dave Foster and said, "Remember Kendon, we were doing this record?" And he's like looking around at everybody and he goes, "You were there too." And I'm like, oh my God. You know, so I feel like, you know, it's just the greatest place to work, and I really appreciate it. You know, and it's the greatest place to hear music and be with music, you know. And if whatever I can do to be part of it, to make someone have a great experience and feel welcome, and hospitality is key, you know, then, you know, I'm happy with that.
I have to say, it really truly is awe-inspiring walking into this room, and you can feel it. I want to thank you for sitting down with us today.
Oh, Paul. My God, it's good stories, you know.